Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio, and I am a little bit croaky today, but it's time to talk about Umbreon. Because you see, recently, and let's face it, it's because of Prismatic Evolutions and that Umbreon EX card, right? There has been a lot of talk about Umbreon. So I decided it was time to go back and have a look and go, all right then, look, we know this Umbreon is big, and actually for what it's worth, let's not forget that the Umbreon, the one from Evolving Skies, back in the Sword and Shield era, like that was the big card in the whole of the Sword and Shield era. That was like the singular big card, right? So are we talking about a couple of big cards that happen to be Umbreon? Or Umbreon being, a little bit of a boost to already big cards? Or are we talking about actually Umbreon itself as being inevitable? Umbreon just being a card where, because there is an Umbreon on the card, all of a sudden, you know what? It's going to be an absolute monster card. Now, in terms of the Sunbreon, as people are calling it, the new one from Prismatic Evolutions, that's about a $1,500 card. We are not at a stage yet where we can really talk too much about this and what's been going on, because it's early, there's not been enough sales, etc., etc. So, here's a graph from TCG Player, and it's just like, kind of going up and down a little bit. Honestly, although it says $1,600 there, it's really more of a $1,500-ish card. It's about $1,500, which is absurd, just to be clear, but that's where we are. That's not a surprise, we talked about that one a lot. And similarly, we can have a look at the Umbreon VMAX from Evolving Skies. A year ago, that was a $500 card, which incidentally, if you look at the last few years of the Pokemon TCG, $500 is sensible. Well, I mean, it's sensible as a Pokemon card ever is. But $500 is kind of this card can be pulled from a pack, and it's absolutely absurd. It's a gigantic card. Okay. You know what? Fine. But that's been about the top limit. That's been about the biggest we've seen. And yes, I know at the very end of the graph I'm showing you here there is a little bit of a dip, but you're dipping down from 1,700 to 1,200, which is actually a very significant drop over the course of a couple of weeks. But we've seen sales of like $2,000 recently, so let's not go over and above here. This is a card which is going to go up and down. It's still 3 times what it was like a year ago, so let's not get over ourselves here. This is a phenomenal card. You're going to see up and down fluctuations. I don't think anyone is particularly surprised about the Umbreon VMAX. But what about the other cards? What about cards which, they should just be regular cards? What about the Umbreon V from Evolving Skies? And look, this has T0 artwork. T0 is an artist for whom I've got a lot of love. It is a great piece of art. And it is an Umbreon, but it's an alternate art V, which means the pull rates are much better than the alternate art VMAX is. And to be blunt, nobody really cared about this card before. Not want to be mean about it, but when all the hype was going off for the Umbreon VMAX, that would have been a great time for everyone to take that Umbreon V and go silly, but they never did. That was not a card which is going silly. Like a year ago, it was a $90 card. And again, it's worth pointing out that a year ago, we're not talking about the release of Evolving Skies here. This is just like as far back as the graph will go on TCG Player. Don't get any mistake about this. This was not a particularly expensive card. Like, don't get me wrong. In the context of alternate art Vs, yeah, it was a moderately expensive card in that regard, but it was never a big card. Well, right now, it's sitting there at a $240 card. And this is the point of the video where we need to start looking at some comps, because, yeah, I know Evolving Skies has kind of sold out, and it's been gone for a little while. And, yeah, I know that this is an Umbreon, but let's not pretend that every single card from Evolving Skies has seen a similar kind of jump, because it hasn't. Like, if we look at some other just random alternate art Vs, Noivern with the phenomenal Mitsuhiro Rita artwork, still sitting there a $40 card. It's not back at its peak yet. Okay, fine, that one's a little bit cheating, because you can't really compare a Noivern to an Umbreon. That's a little bit unfair. So what if we have a look at some other of the evolutions? What if we have a little bit of a look at Leafeon? Well, if we have a little bit of a look at Leafeon, actually, to be fair, this one has been going up a fair bit recently. It has. True story. Having said that, it's still significantly lower than Umbreon, sitting there at like $110. The EVs as a whole are pretty sought after. They're going to be going up. But actually, that's nowhere near what we're seeing from Umbreon. There does seem to be a bigger bump here because it is Umbreon. But what about the other Umbreon VMAX, the forgotten Umbreon VMAX? Because actually, there was another. There was the one that came around that everyone kind of forgot about really quickly. But the one that initially came around as it was a Trainers Gallery in Brilliant Stars. It's got Karen on it. Yeah, that's still a $50 card. But look at the last year. It's gone from a $20 to a $50. Now, the idea that there was an Umbreon VMAX, a lovely alternate art, which was sitting there at a $20 card for so long, like, if you wanted this card, you should have picked it up. But you'll notice it is rocketing up now. Like, it seems to be that people have basically realized at this point, actually, you know what? This card is still an Umbreon. It's an alternate art. At some point it's going to go. And look, Brilliant Stars is getting pretty hard to pick up, just like Evolving Skies. It's just that Evolving Skies, it's going to be reductive, I'm going to say it. It is Evolving Skies. It's a special set. It's got that cachet that the other sets just don't have. But this is still only a $50 card. And that seems way too low. But then again, it has been jumping up dramatically. As always, we need to do a little bit of a comp here and go, well, hang on a second. What does that actually mean? Well, there's a lot of these cards in the Trainers Gallery that just are not making waves. You know, Mimikyu VMAX with Ace Roller. It's a $35 card. But then again, that one has been shooting up lately as well. So, again, we're left with a situation of Umbreon's the biggest, no question about that. But actually, the Brilliant Stars Trainer Gallery as a whole is starting to jump up. Mimikyu is just jumping up there as well. And it's still Mimikyu and Ace Roller. This should be a more popular card than it is. But then again, if you have a look there like a year ago, this was like a $12 card. And if you didn't pick it up, I'm sorry, you missed it. So, Umbreon seems to be jumping up with the other cards, but it seems to be jumping up a little bit more than the other cards. Seems to be the general message that we're getting here. I mean, this one's an awkward one because there just aren't many sales of it. But the Umbreon VMAX was a prize pack promo. It's just a regular Umbreon VMAX. Wonderful Akira Igawa artwork, mind you. However, it's got the Play Pokemon stamp. But it's not just a stamp. It's the fact that that card was only actually available if you pulled it out of a prize promo or a Play Pokemon prize pack. There we go. So it was a bit of a pain to pull up. Well, that's like a $150 card right now, which is absolutely absurd. Or is it? Because actually, you know what? That's a card which isn't being given out in prize packs right now, I'm pretty sure. And it is an Umbreon. And the pull rate is kind of low. And people do love their Umbreon. But should it really be higher than Charizard V Star? Which has actually gone down in the past year and is sitting at $130. Why is Umbreon higher than Charizard? Like, I thought Charizard was the big dude here. Now, if we actually compare apples to apples, there is a Charizard VMAX. And actually, the Charizard VMAX has, well, it's winning, frankly. And it's actually winning by a fair bit. This was essentially the first prize pack card, which jumped up, and it's kind of still playing on that. The Charizard VMAX on the prize pack is like a, well, it's about a $400-ish card, which is significantly higher than the Umbreon. But this is about the only example we've got Generally what we see, as I've shown you in this video, Umbreon pushes cards up. The Umbreon that came around in Prismatic Evolutions, much higher than any other card in that set, or any other alternate RTX. The Umbreon VMAX from Evolving Skies, not only higher than other VMAXs in Evolving Skies, but honestly, higher than any other VMAX that we had in the Sword and Shield era. And a lot of the time when you see these Umbreon jumping up, they are accompanied by other similar cards from similar sets, which are also jumping up at the same time. But they're not jumping up as much, or to the same level, or as fast. And I suppose that's our conclusion about Umbreon. Umbreon goes a little bit too nuts. Most of the time we can sit here and go, oh, but these cards are also jumping, and yes, they are, but not to the level of Umbreon. It started with the Moonbreon and really seems to have cemented with the Sunbreon, although I don't like that name for the card at all. But the conclusion here essentially is Umbreon has got to that point where it's special, and it's really starting to challenge Charizard at this point for ridiculous cards. Which is silly, but that's where we are. Or is it silly? I still think Umbreon is the best of the evolutions, but I think it's a bit absurd that it's gone to these levels. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Tell me what you think about all of this in the comment section. Do your usual and go nuts, but do make sure you mean I say. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.